Do you like movies and games also? Listen, so much more, they all know. Vice, Lotus and Friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 172, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is
Lotus Prince
and Fakafon.
And we are here back again for another episode. This is our Halloween spooktacular.
Happy Halloween, everybody!
Yay!
Now we have talked about like horror things in the past, and I think we even had an episode on just horror games alone. But I wanted to, especially with Lotus and myself, we tend to dabble in a lot of different horror stuff and things that we were looking forward to. So I kind of want to do an update on our current horror interests and things that we are really digging at the moment. I know Fakafon has a couple things to talk about here. So I wanted to get off the ground here with the fact that I've been watching a lot of like the horror classics that I've never seen before. It's actually kind of funny considering like I've taught like some film classes before in the past, and I was a cinema studies minor, and I was like president of the film club. I all these things, but I'd never even seen Psycho all the way through. So I actually watched that over the weekend. So I
Psycho,
quite enjoyed it.
I have seen Psycho, but it also took me too long to actually see it. I've seen surprisingly little Hitchcock, but Psycho was brilliant.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Hitchcock. A lot of people cite Vertigo and North by Northwest as his like favorites of his, and I
wasn't really into Vertigo. Like
I didn't like Vertigo as much as everybody
else. The premise
else
was great, but it just kept going. Although I will say there was like a twist toward the end, which I won't say what it was.
Sure.
But I thought it was one of the most brilliantly executed twists I've seen in a movie, because I don't know if this was intended that way, but like it worked for me on a meta level. I was thinking of something in terms of movie making.
Sure.
And the thing that I was thinking about turned out to actually factor into the plot, which I could not believe. Like, I wasn't really a big fan of Vertigo, but that was so good that it was amazing.
I'm actually a big fan of Rear Window. I like that one quite a bit.
That was a good one. Not my favorite, but very good. I liked it quite a bit.
My favorite of Hitchcock's movies actually is one of his lesser-known favorites. It's actually called Strangers on a Train. Have you ever heard of this one?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
I've heard the name.
Yeah. Have you ever seen it?
No, not personally.
So this one's really cool. It doesn't have any of the like the famous actors. Like Rear Window has Jimmy Stewart
and Jimmy Stewart and Jimmy Stewart.
Well, just look at it.
There was a murder in the other apartment building. I'll throw a lasso around the moon. And that wasn't Hitchcock. But...
Yeah, that sounded more like Don Knotts than anything. But anyway,
well, whatever. But the point is, that was from It's a Wonderful
Way
Life.
Too many ostriches. But Strangers on a Train is actually a pretty cool concept. So like these two strangers on a train are talking, and one is like a tennis star, and the other is actually like a fan of his, and they're talking, and the tennis star talks about how he's having trouble with his wife, like they're especially during that time period, like they were close to divorce, and he was like about to divorce his wife, and especially at that time that was like a huge scandal.
Yeah, it's taboo.
Yeah, and he's just talking about his frustrations with it, and like the other guy's like talking about his frustrations with his mom and how he's like living with his mom, and like very psycho kind of stuff. And the fan goes, well, why don't we swap? Why don't I?
That's bizarre.
Why don't he goes, why don't I get rid of your problem and you get rid of mine? And
oh my god. I think I've seen that Simpsons episode.
And he goes like crisscross, and like the tennis star's like, yeah, sure, whatever, like just to blow him off, and then the guy actually goes and kills his estranged wife.
Holy shit!
Yeah,
and the whole rest of the movie is him trying to get away from like the blackmailing that this guy is trying to do to get him to kill his mom.
Jesus Christ!
It's a fantastic movie. I really, really love it.
Man,
it's really well paced. Yeah.
For my favorite
really
Hitchcock,
awesome.
I might still go with Psycho, but I also saw North by Northwest, which is more of a thriller than
it's a good one.
Like a horror. Like it's just like an exciting movie, but that was also very entertaining.
I like the climax on Mount Richmore.
You actually beat me to it. I was going to say, I can't believe they ripped off of Richie Rich. The funny thing is, in Richie Rich, there's a part where like the villain of the movie is watching the security cameras,
John
but not
Larroquette,
really.
by the way.
Like off to the side, he has the plane scene from North by Northwest just on the TV. So like, yes, they clearly took homage or took inspiration from North by Northwest, but the movie also just directly is like, yep, that's the movie we're taking it from.
The climax of the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen any Hitchcock, Lou?
If I did, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
That's all right. But moving on, I did want to also say that I've been getting into the, it 'tis the season. I've been watching some of the ones that I've always wanted to see. So I am a big fan of Night of the Living Dead, which is the original.
Black and white George Romero.
Yeah, and it recently got a Criterion release, and for a long time it had only like really substandard releases of the movie, partially because the movie is in public domain. And it's in public domain because of a rights issue. Like they didn't like publish the movie correctly, so it fell into public domain. So like nobody was putting forth the effort to restore the movie properly. So you have all these like poor transfers. A lot of the cases you get like the standard version where it's been cropped for television. Hardly ever do you ever see like the full widescreen version. And Criterion just released like a fully restored version of the movie with like a lot of really cool special features like they usually do.
With how many movies Criterion has released, shouldn't they be called Criteria?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, continue about Living Dead, please.
No, that was really funny. It hit home.
Classic Lotus Prince.
Well, shouldn't it be Lotus Prince? There are several, but anyway, no. You're right.
Wow, that doesn't even make sense. I don't understand.
But yeah, I actually hadn't really watched many of the sequels. I've seen 2 of them. I hadn't seen like the famous sequels though. Like there are 6 movies in the Living Dead series. There's Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and then it goes to Land of the Dead, and then Diary of the Dead, and then Survival of the Dead. Survival of the Dead's the last one he made before he passed away. So there's 6 of them. I saw Land of the Dead very soon after it came out in the theater. I actually enjoyed that one, more so in retrospect. When I first watched it, I was like, but it actually has like a lot of nuance to it that you don't really expect, which actually most of these movies really do have some really good social commentary. That's what made them so good. From what I hear,
especially the first one and Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. Day of the Dead actually has a lot of existential stuff in it. So
was Day of the Dead the one with the like the asshole Colonel Army guy or whatever? Like,
yes.
Who like choke on it?
Yeah, exactly. So I also saw Diary of the Dead at some point, but I had never seen Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, and they're both highly regarded. Dawn of the Dead is considered by many it's a debate on whether the first or the second movie are the best ones. Like it's way up there.
Well, the second one's in color, so it automatically wins because black and white is inferior.
And then you won't like Strangers on a Train, but
Yeah, or Psycho for that matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless I want to watch the
Vince Vaughn
colorized
version?
exact remake of the original.
Yeah, what the fuck?
That's so bizarre.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to make I'm not gonna change the movie at all. I'm just going to make the same movie.
It's so weird.
So bizarre. But anyway,
with the guy from Wedding Crashers.
Yeah, exactly. At the time, swingers.
Okay.
But and H. But anyway, I finally got around to watching Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. Well, I finished most of Day of the Dead, I should say. Now, Dawn of the Dead is extremely influential. It was you actually mentioned unknowingly, probably. I don't know whether you knew this or not, Fakafon. Did you know that movie Zombie, that game Zombie, the Ubisoft one, is actually an adaptation of Dawn of the Dead?
Yeah, I knew that.
Oh, you did know that. Okay, great.
I never watched the movie myself, but yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, so in Europe, Dawn of the Dead was called Zombie with a an I, and believe it or not, it was pretty cool. They actually made their own set of sequels for the zombie movies.
Oh, so it had like they went off on their own.
Well, they did, but aren't they all? Isn't it like Troll and Troll 2, where there's a bunch of just random movies they made called Zombie that like there's Zombie 2 and there's Zombie 3, but they're not really,
I'm not entirely sure on the chronology. I know that like some of them are better than others, that's for sure. But
like I'm asking though, I thought it was like Troll 2, which just has the Troll name, but it is not in any way actually a sequel to Troll.
Yeah, I don't think there's any continuity or anything to them or anything like that.
It's just like it's almost like Alan Smithy. Like it's just a name people agree to and they don't want to have their movies known. It's like, oh, am I allowed to use the name Zombie? I'll do that. People have heard of Zombie. I'll make Zombie 5 or whatever the hell.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, now I get it.
Even the Living Dead series itself doesn't have much of a chronology. It's even up to debate on whether they're actually like in the same universe or not.
No, I mean, whether they are or not, though, they're still thematic and made by the same guy.
Correct.
But I'm talking about, like, I'm going to make a horror movie of my own, and I'll just call it Zombie,
Exactly.
So it's like, are these made by the same guy? Like, no, they're not.
They're Italian horror movies, so they tend to be pretty good.
Was it like Lucio Fulci or something? I might be wrong about that.
I don't know. I don't know the name of the guy who made the zombie movies, but
well, the most important director is, of course, Claudio Fragasso, because he made Troll 2.
So technically, Zombie U is a part of the Living Dead series.
Really?
Well, no, wouldn't it not be, though? Because it's just like running around London anywhere.
Yeah, but I mean, it's tangentially related.
Well, yeah, it's called Zombie, so like, all right, yeah.
Well, it's made by Ubisoft, so
it is an Ubisoft zombie game.
It's a tribute to their original game, which is an adaptation.
And it's a first-person Dark Souls, where if you die, you have to go find where you died to get your stuff back.
Well, you're not
It's a
the
cool
same
game. I
person,
like it.
though.
No, that's the brilliant part. To get your stuff back, you have to kill the zombie of your previous character.
Yeah.
It's fucking brilliant.
But I actually really liked these movies. And also, one thing I noticed, I am a huge Gorillaz fan. I'm like, I've been to several of their concerts, 3 of them, one of them with Lotus. And I own all their albums, listen to all the... What was that?
I said that was a damn good concert.
Oh, goddamn, it was good.
What was it called? Like the Now Now
The
Tour.
Now Now Tour, yeah. I am a huge fan of Gorillaz, and one of their early hits actually samples the beginning of Dawn of the Dead, or Day of the Dead. I'm sorry.
Oh.
M1A1, the song that they opened the concert with.
Oh yeah,
where it goes.
Cool shoe shine. Oh no, that's 1999, 2000, whatever.
Yeah, this one is like, "Hello, is there anybody there?"
Oh.
Hello.
I actually don't think I was familiar with that one.
Oh, okay. Well, it's one of their like punk sounding songs from their original
really
album.
work.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually written into the Gorillaz story. They used to be a punk band, but it was really cool to be like, oh man, I know that, and like the beginning music is actually used in the song too. So
That's pretty cool.
really cool. I've been.
So did you wonder why the rest of the Gorillaz song wasn't playing in Dawn of the Dead? Where's the rest of it?
Hey.
But I love these movies. I mean, Dawn of the Dead had Tom Savini, who's a pretty popular horror figure right now, as like the main bad guy of the biker gang that tries to take back the mall from the survivors that are in there, the protagonists of that movie. Just really cool. Also, it's pretty neat in Dawn of the Dead to see them like make use of a mall and its amenities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and regarding what you were saying about social commentaries, the whole thing with Dawn of the Dead was talking about like consumer culture and how like who are the real zombies, man? Because if you go to a mall and you see all the people, like if it's like if you go to a Walmart, you see like customers just kind of they actually do kind of walk around like zombies, just vacantly like looking for like walking real slow and like where's the thing that I'm looking for. If you go to a mall not for the purpose of going to the mall and you people watch, not even watch one person, but if you kind of like
just sit
reduce
around
your focus and watch the crowd, like there kind of is a zombie vibe about it. So like
yeah.
that was Dawn of the Dead's message.
It's the same in Montreal when you go in the subways, in the metro, like people going for in the metro for their job or going out.
It's very mechanical. Yeah, waiting in line to get on or off the bus or the subway or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the things that I enjoyed about it, like there are actual like quotes from the movie, at times when they say like things that are pretty profound. It's not even cheesy by today's standards. It's just like, why are the zombies even here? Like there weren't any like living people like at the mall when they arrived.
Oh.
And they're like, so they're like walking around and they're like cross-cutting the zombies with the mannequins, and they're kind of like transposing the mannequins with the zombies, like kind of juxtaposing them, like they're saying that they're similar. So they're just kind of walking around like the mall, like going from place to place with no real aim.
So almost like a past instinct.
Yeah, exactly. They actually comment on that specifically. They're like, this is what they knew, so they kind of gravitated towards it as like a lower brain function kind of thing.
Yeah.
You even see like one of the zombies is like in like the fountain there and like picking up change out of the fountain and like what do I do with this? Kind of thing. But like I know I want this, but I don't know why, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yep.
It's really pretty cool. I really enjoyed that movie. I also kind of like, I kind of like. I mean, by today's standards, zombie stuff's been like played out to shit. I mean, we have a couple good zombie things pop up every once in a while. Like the resurgence of zombie stuff is thankfully gone. So there's the stuff that does pop up, it tends to be pretty decent. Like Zombieland 2 just came out. I heard was pretty alright, and I like the first one.
Right,
yeah,
the first one was great.
I like that one quite a bit, but like there was a lot. There was like too much zombie stuff. Is what I mean.
Zombieland was kind of nice because it was like a very different take. It wasn't just like, my God, zombies everywhere. Like
it was a
other
comedy.
Movie.
Yeah.
I was like I watched the movie on TV. Like I didn't see it in the theaters, and like I think I knew about the Bill Murray cameo, like because everyone talked about it already.
Yeah.
But like, man, I laughed so hard because I was blindsided by it when they were asking Bill Murray if he had any regrets in his life, and he's like, nah, I think my life was pretty good. Well, maybe Garfield. Like, I fucking lost it. That's the funniest thing.
Like, not even like on the air, like in like a permanent
yeah,
place,
that's why I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It was like a Ryan Reynolds kind of joke.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't want a green suit with that CG. It's like, it's so like, you know what I mean, but Bill Murray just directly says the name of the thing. It's like, Garfield, I don't like that I was in it.
Did you see Deadpool 2?
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
He goes back in time and kills himself.
Yes, it's
That was the funniest shit.
amazing.
Yeah, you're welcome,
While he's
Canada.
reading the script to Green Lantern.
Yeah, you see Ryan Reynolds with the script like, this is going to be my ticket to fame or whatever, and fucking kills himself. You're welcome, Canada. That was the fun. Oh my
so
god.
great.
Oh, that was great.
It's so great.
What's actually kind of funny is that movie is actually very integral to his life. He met his wife on the set. Like,
Oh, really?
Deadpool 2?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Huh.
Yeah. His girlfriend in the movie is his wife in real life now.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm really loving this. I'm gonna finish Day of the Dead, of course, which has some like who are the real monsters kind of questions. You know, all of the movies really do, but like this one is they're like experimenting on the zombies, and you feel bad for the zombies in this one. So like the zombies are like clearly like, just leave them alone, like get away from them, and that's it. Like, stop fucking with them.
Yeah, see, like, unfortunately, I mean, I actually like the movie all right, but, like, I didn't know about the message in the original, but the only of the Dead thing I've ever seen was not George Romero. It was the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Where it was, I like the movie, but it was just a straight-up action movie, and there was no, that I'm aware of, social commentary, so they didn't have anything, like, fucking around with the zombies or whatever. It was just, like, they're the angry running zombies, and, like, oh god, we gotta avoid those, and that was kind of the whole movie.
Wait, Zack Snyder movie devoid of social commentary?
Can you believe it? Well, one thing that I thought was extremely fucking bizarre, though, like, even in the theater, was there was a character who looked like Ben Stiller's asshole character in Happy Gilmore.
Oh, wow.
And he even had the line, "You could trouble me for a warm glass of shut the fuck up," instead of shut the hell up. And I was like, why are you referencing the asshole orderly from Happy Gilmore in this fucking zombie? It was the weirdest thing.
Well, I feel pretty fortunate because like years ago, I kind of had an itch to get like Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead when they were on Blu-ray, and I picked them up, and thankfully I did that because unfortunately, earlier last year, I think George Romero passed away, and Dawn of the Dead in particular is in rights hell right now.
Ugh.
And you cannot watch it streaming. You can't buy a new copy of the Blu-ray or anything like that. It's well worth over $100 now, just to like have the privilege of watching that movie, and it's a seminal classic of the genre. So I'm thankful that I had a copy of the Blu-ray, first of all, and I picked up the remainder of the series because I had Land of the Dead on DVD, but I ended up getting it on Blu-ray. It tended to be it came in a double pack with the remake of Dawn of the Dead, the one you just talked about. So I'm looking forward to actually watching those. And watching them in a new context, and I also got the final two movies as well. So I'm looking forward to like revisiting this series, just because he did a lot with very little all the time, and it was pretty fascinating also to watch like the behind the scenes featurettes and stuff like of like Dawn of the Dead. Like they had to be very careful in the mall because it was like a functional mall, and
it was
they
an
were,
actual
like, filming
mall.
at night.
Oh.
Yeah. Pretty crazy stuff. So having said that, I've talked a bit. How about you, Lotus? What are you into right now?
Well, actually, this is not something I'm into, but I do want to point out one more relevant thing. Is that one thing I had heard is that the original Dead Rising was like you're defending yourself and waiting for the time limit to end while you're dealing with zombies in a mall. From what I've heard, I think that Capcom was like sued over that, like for ripping off of Dawn of the Dead, but it was one of those cases where like, what exactly are you suing us for? Like the existence of a mall? Like zombies aren't your property, and neither are malls or things in malls, and like they ended up like winning for that reason. Like I see where you're coming from, but there's not enough to make it like we don't cover any of the Dawn of the Dead plot points. There's not enough connection to make except that it's zombies that are in a mall. It's
a definite blatant homage, though. Like the
it
beginning
clearly
of the
is,
movie,
but it's not rip-off worthy. You know, it's not like you can't like you're not ripping off of Dawn of the Dead because it's
In a
you're not
mall,
doing
yeah.
what Dawn of the Dead does. It's just the basic premise that you are in a mall.
I mean, even the layout of the mall, like from where you begin, like the command center of the mall, like the office, is kind of laid out just like in the movie.
That I did
mean,
not know.
You know, like it's if it were called the Dawn of the Dead video game, everybody would fucking believe it.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
In some ways, I don't know who to defend on this one, because like he's also the one who came up with the concept of zombies in movies. Like everything before that is like a proto-zombie movie. Like you can't even like there's nothing quite like the hordes of zombies in Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
With the like the cannibalism kind of and virus kind of thing going on. Combined with the social commentary, combined with all that other stuff, he invented the zombie genre as we know it. And the only thing that you could maybe like, you could be like, oh, maybe The Mummy is a zombie movie. I mean, they're they're zombie in bandages. I mean, come on, but and nothing. There's no hordes of mummies. There's only over one mummy. You know, like this is a thing. So, I could see why you'd be like, you know what, fucking pay me. You know,
Give me my tribute.
Also, he had also been known to be like, I kind of need a hamburger at the moment.
Yeah.
Like he was definitely the vision of a starving artist, a hugely influential man who really never, like, really made it super big in except in name alone and reverence to people who loved his stuff. You know what I mean? So I could see where he was coming from, but also, kind of fuck off. Yeah, it's one of those things.
But anyway, if we're talking movies here, I think we've probably mentioned this before, but one of my favorite horror movies has got to be 1982, The Thing.
Oh, dude, yes.
That movie's a freaking treat every single time I watch it.
It's one of my
Except
top
for the
3
first
favorite
time.
films of all time. I really, really love it.
It's
the first
so
time I ever
good,
watched
dude.
it.
It's so
yeah, it
good.
is. The first time I ever watched it, I think I just didn't know what to expect. So it just felt very slow to me, and I'm like, when does anything happen? But like on a second view, it's like, you know, Dr. No, the James Bond movie. It's not just boring and nothing's happening. It's like deliberate, and in the Thing's case, it's a slow burn.
Yes.
Like wait for it to come out. Like if you're expecting crazy monsters running around corners and chasing people, this is not the movie for you. That's not the point. It's the whole movie's about paranoia. Like somebody, or maybe even multiple people, are the monster because it can, you know, disguise itself.
Or in the
who's
case of Space Jam, are they Monstars?
They might be monstars. But like, yeah, who's the bad guy or bad guys? And is even the main character we're following, is he a bad guy? Like, and you're not gonna really know until the very end of the movie. And it's just very well done because the basic idea is like 6 or 7 people are in this Arctic base and are slowly losing trust in each other. Like anybody could be a killer. Who is it? And of course, the people who are not the Thing know that they're not, but even we, the viewers, aren't quite sure of who to trust. So we actually have even less faith than the characters in the movie who are at risk of death. So it's really entertaining to watch, and so many incredibly creative creature effects. Whatever the Thing becomes next, whatever it is, you're not ready for it. It's very original every time.
It is my favorite special effects showcase of any movie I've ever seen.
It's so damn good.
The stuff in that movie looks like it's actually happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like and no other movie has come close to it. Like it like this is before CG, everything's practical, but it all looks like real shit going on. Like it doesn't look like, you know, theater stuff. It looks like it actually happened.
And by the way, speaking of practical effects that look like real-ish, this movie is often overlooked, and I really want to give it a shout out. The original Pumpkinhead with Lance Henriksen.
Yeah, that's one of your favorites.
I love that movie. Like, there's like I think 4 Pumpkinhead movies, and none of the sequels match the first. The second one straight up sucks. Pumpkinhead Bloodwings. The third Pumpkinhead movie has like a bad looking CG Pumpkinhead, but the premise and execution are interesting. And the fourth Pumpkinhead movie is weirdly like the McCoys versus the Hatfields story with Pumpkinhead in it. But I actually quite like that movie. But the first one is definitely the best. The basic idea is Lance Henriksen is just... He lives in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. Just some random town no one's ever heard of in the middle of absolutely nowhere with his kid. And they're just living their lives, whatever. And some city people are driving through. And they accidentally run over Lance Henriksen's kid and kill him. And Lance Henriksen's like, oh, fuck this. So the thing with the town is that there's a local witch who looks like she should be dead. They never tell you how old she is, but she looks too old to still be there. Yeah, it's I don't know about this person. And the thing is, if anybody has ever really, 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 really wronged you, if you really are mad enough, you can hit up the witch and get her to do a curse, which will get whoever wronged you killed. And that's where Pumpkinhead comes in. And by the way, the movie itself addresses this. His head does not look anything like a pumpkin. He's named after a location. Pumpkinhead cemetery or something.
Really? I never knew that. I never knew that's why it was called that.
Yeah, he's named by where he lives, not by what he looks like in the slightest. He actually looks fucking scary too. He looks really good. And he'll just come down and hunt these city kids down. And the city kids are a bunch of assholes, but they're getting butchered here. They're like, could we stop this? And Lance Henriksen himself is like, yeah, I think I've had enough. I didn't know it would be like this. And the witch is like, nope, sorry, it's got to finish before it's over. And it's nobody's happy. And how do you deal with Pumpkinhead? I don't fucking know. And what's also interesting about him is that whenever he's in the vicinity, you just hear a bunch of cicadas. It's his signature sound. It's kind of like the ch-ch-ch. Whenever Jason's around, you just know he's around. Pumpkinhead's just got cicadas. So it's creepy because it's a real natural thing that you could hear at some point in the year.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
true.
there are just angels from Evangelion about to come.
You're probably right. I bet you it's angels from Neon Genesis Evangelion Reloaded or whatever the fuck it's called. Rebirth.
In Pumpkinhead.
No, Pumpkinhead's great though. He's a legitimately scary looking monster, and in the first movie he's quote real. He's practical. The second movie is just completely not worth it. The third movie he's bad CG, but what's interesting though, well, I can't really describe the third's premise so much and why I like it because it involves kind of spoiling the first movie. But it's interesting. And what's also cool, by the way, is that Lance Henriksen actually shows up in all the sequels.
Oh,
More
wow.
of a cameo than anything else, but he's there.
That's kind of cool with the guy who plays Norman Bates actually shows up in all the sequels, basically.
Oh, he's the main character in the sequels.
Yeah.
The sequels are actually, interesting plots. Even if you don't like them as much as the first movie, they go in interesting, valid directions. Apparently
Psycho 2 is actually an excellent movie.
Yeah, Psycho 2 is great because Norman Bates gets reintegrated into society, and it's but everyone knows he's this psycho knife killer. What do you do about that? And one of the characters from the first movie, the friend or sister, I forgot what, of Marianne Crane.
Sister,
is just hell-bent on revenge against Norman Bates. Because, the courts are well, he's been rehabilitated enough to go back into society. And she's like, are you fucking kidding me? He killed, 5 or 7 or whatever people. Fuck this guy. So it's a really interesting dynamic where Norman Bates, for the whole movie, just wants to be left alone and be a citizen. So it's a very different dynamic. The third movie, I forgot what the plot was. It's just more about things being weird and creepy and some creepy guy shows up. The fourth movie was interesting because I don't remember why this was the case, but there's some radio show talking about killers or whatever, and it would take call-ins. And Norman Bates himself calls in. He's like, oh yeah, I'm a killer. I've killed before, and I actually want to do it again because I got somebody pregnant, and I know that I'm a fucking psychopath, and I get the feeling my kid is going to be psycho too. So I'm going to have to kill, like, the woman I love to prevent more of me.
What a
and it's like,
psychotic thought.
Yeah.
But, like, the thing is, though, you can see where he's coming from. Like, he has to perpetuate his insanity to try to prevent generational insanity. Like, what if he does have a crazy kid? I don't know. So, like,
Yeah, but what if he doesn't?
it's an interesting perspective to take.
Yeah, no, I see.
Like that's wrong, but I get it, you know?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, what if he is right? I don't know, but killing is wrong. But like, it's an interesting, like, again, like, focusing on Norman himself is an interesting sort of, I don't know if I'd call it a character study, but it's an interesting direction to take.
Sure.
And meanwhile, the people on the radio show are like, "What? You're a fucking killer? What is this?" And so, like, it's interesting from that point as well.
Well, how about you, Fakafon? What did you have to share here?
Oof, well, I'm certainly not a horror buff like you guys, and I don't really have any recent stories except for Doki Doki Literature Club, which that fucking scarred me.
That's a good one.
Oh.
That game will fuck you up.
Because,
Oh,
I don't handle death and suicide very well, so having both these things in a video game, I'm like, oh, jeez.
Yeah.
But I'd say...
You are, man, you're not going to like the next game on your Let's Play.
Oh, jeez. I'll be sure to avoid it. But,
It is legitimately disturbing.
for movies, I guess I was lucky enough because I was not a Silent Hill fan, and I had never really played a Silent Hill except like a rental before I saw the movie, the first one.
The idea of renting Silent Hill, that's going to fuck you up.
What's
this game? Let's try it out. Like, oh.
Well, but the thing is, the movie, I liked it a lot because I was not a fan of Silent Hill, so I came in with like no expectations at all, with no without knowing anything about it.
Sure.
With no preconceptions.
Exactly. So I liked it a lot, and I know like most fans were lukewarm to the movie.
It's one of the better video game movies. Pyramid Head had no business being there, but like as a video game adaptation and like the effects and the visuals, the movie excelled.
And the theming too, I think, they kind of pulled it off really well. Just like the mistakes of the city, like turning back on
all the enemies were Silent Hill 2 enemies, but like they really looked and acted the part.
Yeah,
like, and it was all practical too. It was great.
Yeah, shit, I didn't know that. Like the enemies, or like
even the janitor who was all bent over backwards, I think that was real. The guy was like a contortionist or something.
Nice, that's really cool.
And that guy was an original creation for the movie, but I think that was real as well. It was like, nice.
So for movies, I don't have much, and even for video games, I didn't play a lot of horror games because it's just not me. But I would say my favorites is it's like a very weird triangle I have. Overblood, the System Shock series, and the first Five Nights at Freddy's are my favorite horror games.
Oh,
and
Overblood.
only the first for Five Nights at Freddy's.
That's funny if you're not a big fan of horror games and you play like the scariest game ever made.
That's true, but the very, very okay. So I wanna compare. Like, take most horror games, like let's say System Shock, and let's compare it to the first Five Nights at Freddy's. A game like System Shock is all about like moving around, going towards the danger all the time, and having it randomly pop around because the enemies just appear. If Five Nights
and then even respawn.
Yeah, which by the way is scary as fuck because you never know when they're coming, and then you suddenly hear the monkeys, and you're like, ah, crap.
Yeah, and like the bad news is like I hate the idea that I can't clear out an area, but what's good about that is that it always keeps you on edge.
Oh, dude.
And if you ever have to go look for something you're missing, you're not just
going there,
wandering through endless corridors that are empty, like like Doom 2. If you can't find the key card, you're just wandering empty hallways.
Yeah, in System Shock, there's always something, and that's scary.
Yeah.
And in Five Nights at Freddy's, it's the complete opposite because now you're somewhere you don't have to go anywhere, and in fact,
you literally don't move.
You're preventing the horror from coming to you.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Which is honestly I thought it was a brilliant idea. And what they did with the jump scares was also really good. There's no jump scares until you lose. And that's the only time there's jump scares is when you lost. So it's, shit, and you lost. It's not just like you turn around a corner, some asshole goes boo and leaves,
Yeah, no bullshit. Yeah, that's fair.
That's what I liked about the first Five Nights at Freddy. Yeah, what? Sorry?
Did you like the rest of the series at all?
No.
I know,
No, I didn't.
No, not at all.
I liked the first one, and after that I was like, no.
Why not?
Because it took... Well, the second game was just more of the same, but harder, because you had to go press a button, and then it was like there was more enemies. I'm like, I'm not into that. And then the
Okay.
third game was just like there's one guy, he's an idiot. If you make sound, he goes there. So I'm like, okay. And then like then there's the one with the hospital bed. And at some point, I'm like, they should have went. This is gonna sound crazy, but they should have went with the Overblood route and just like diverge from horror and
Copy the Overblood model, if you will.
Yeah, get a little robot called Peepo.
well,
People.
Peepo, is that all you could say? You could just say Peep?
but what I mean is that Overblood 1 is a sci-fi horror game, and that's the whole theme of the game until the end. And Overblood 2, they were like, nah, let's just make like an adventure, crazy, kooky.
Okay.
And I thought,
Sure.
there's such a big mystery to unravel in all the FNAF games. That's kind of a common theme. Is like, but why are they doing this? What happened in that restaurant, etc. And you start to uncover these in the other games. And I think that should have been like almost a Nancy Drew kind of thing, where you like, I'd rather you'd have been like investigating than like dealing with the horror again, or you would deal with the horror again, but not like directly, just like closing doors and shit.
Sure.
So that's what it was. It's like the first Five Nights at Freddy's was so great, and when everything else, the other games were like just derivations of that same idea that I don't know. I didn't like it.
Gotcha.
I was just more like, okay, but now I want to know about the story, and I don't want to like click on an arcade game and collect balloons to like.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That makes sense.
And that's
You wanted to play Night Trap, not like Extreme Night Trap.
yeah, basically. Night Trap is already hard enough as it is.
Night Trap is extreme Night Trap. That game's fucking impossible.
Yeah, even with a guide, you gotta be like fucking like lightning reflexes.
You must have two people, one of them on
Like a
guide
navigator.
duty.
Yeah.
Because that game is.
Yeah, like you are not doing this shit by yourself.
Because not only you have to keep track of the enemies, you have to keep track of the people, and you have to keep track of like the passwords and shit, and it's impossible.
And what sucks is that there's full videos of every room throughout the entire game.
And you can't watch the
you have to
interesting
miss
stuff
most
at
of
all.
it. Yeah, you have to miss the cool stuff if you want to get the true ending. That's one thing I'm really happy about with the HD re-release is that I think you can just watch the videos, which is great.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, they did that with the Dragon's Lair, like Blu-rays. You could just like watch Dragon's Lair.
Yeah, I think most of the game releases do that, actually. I think even the Wii one does that.
Well, it's a good idea because they filmed a lot of stuff for the game, and you get to miss a lot of it just because you have to manage the enemies.
Yeah, and the movies, they'll even show all the death sequences, because those are really clever, too.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And as a player, you can't really just stand there and watch the death because that means you lose, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah, and especially not when this is in the arcade, you're losing money, too.
Oh, crap, that's
like,
right.
nobody's going to go looking for deaths in the fucking arcade.
Yeah, because you have to spend money to lose.
Yeah.
And finally,
Wow.
so that was my thoughts on FNAF. For System Shock, well, I kind of already said it. It's just the fact that there's already this great feeling of isolation, kind of like an Alien Isolation 2, where you're just like, you're alone or almost alone in this place, and your only friend is like your worst enemy, which kind of sucks ass.
Yeah, this cold, obviously hateful artificial intelligence just mocking you at every turn. It's amazing.
And then he's like, well, you suck too much. Have some like experience point. Oh, thank you, benevolent asshole. And
yeah. Well, that's in 2. In System Shock 1, she's just the villain.
Oh, completely.
Like, I never played System Shock 1. Like, I just kind of know about it. So, like, I mean, a lot of people who know System Shock probably are more familiar with System Shock 2 at this point.
Yeah.
But, like, I think a lot of people missed, like, the incredibly crazy reveal in that game, which was, like, we didn't know that Shodan was from the first game. Like, Shodan's grudgingly working with you. Like, that's insane. Like, If people had played System Shock 1 first, that would have been mind-blowing. Like, it's kind of like Dragon Ball Z. You watch the show, Episode 1, Goku gets his ass kicked, and then it's like, oh, well, he's an alien, he's a Saiyan guy, and he's got to fight Raditz, his brother, and you're like, okay, like, I understand the premise of the show, but if you'd seen Dragon Ball before that, that's like one twist after another.
Because you're like,
geez,
wait, what?
No
Yeah.
way!
Like he was just a monkey boy. Like
Yeah, like episode 1, he gets beaten with one kick. Like, holy shit, like Piccolo was the final boss of Dragon Ball and he couldn't do that. Like, they were fighting for like multiple episodes,
Yeah.
and then Raditz just walks in and kicks him, and that's the whole fight. I'm like, whoa!
That's true.
Like, what is this?
I didn't even think
how
about
many
that.
Raditzes was Raditz?
I think he was
exactly
a half.
one. Yeah. And then, like, Goku was an alien the whole time. What the fuck? Then he like dies. What? Then Piccolo, the villain of the previous series,
dies
takes
in
his
the
son.
first
What the fuck?
fucking episode.
That's crazy.
Like that shit was insane. Like that's the best possible. And like, but the thing is, like they aired Dragon Ball Z, like I think before Dragon Ball, or at least Dragon Ball wasn't very mainstream.
Wait, in the
so,
US,
like,
you mean?
in the
Okay,
US.
okay,
So a
okay.
lot of people didn't know about original Dragon Ball, so they were like, "Oh, this is a cool start to a series," and they didn't realize how incredibly shocking, like 100% of that episode was.
Yeah, because you're right, because it builds off the foundation of the previous show and immediately
Yeah.
just rocks it. Like,
Yeah. So if I had played System Shock 1 first, and Shodan's like, "Welcome, I'm Shodan, I'm here, and I'm teaming up with you," like what? Like, but like when I had only played 2. So I was like, oh, cool, this can work.
well, even
So it didn't have the same impact on me that it should have.
it doesn't. But the fun thing is that it is still impactful enough that it's a good twist even on its own. That
It's still cool, but I mean, it would be like if you played Bioshock 2 and Frank Fontaine's like, "Hey, buddy, I guess we'll work together," and you're like, you look like a fucking sleazebag. But if you had played Bioshock 1, like, that would have been amazing.
Yeah, that's true. And finally, yeah, just to go over quickly, the reason I love Overblood 1 so much, I have a love-hate relationship with this game because it is garbage, but it's like so much like fun garbage.
It's
Oh,
little
sure.
chef's
It's
kiss
fun
of
to watch.
garbage game. It's very, very good.
And there is one thing about that game. The fighting is so cathartic. I have never played like a game where beating up the enemy felt so good.
Oh, not for me.
No, I don't know.
I thought that was fucking lame.
Oh, I thought it was amazing because like you just.
It's so jank.
Well, yes, that is true. But the sound effects when you hit the enemies and the power behind your attacks and the power behind their
that's
attacks,
true.
it just feels
That's
like you're
true.
beating the shit out of someone.
No, you know what I like?
What?
Even though it's not quite the same. Dead Space, when an enemy's down and you stomp on
Oh
it.
yeah,
'Cause
dude.
You feel that, like when I first tried the game, first time ever, like before I recorded it, like I tried a little bit at a friend's place. When I took a swing, like melee swing, where he just goes like, ugh, I was like, what a lame swing, like that just looked kind of pathetic. And then I stomped, and I was like, "Oh,
That feels
shit."
good,
Like,
yeah.
that was like, "Oh god!"
Especially
Like,
with,
do not
like,
get stomped by Isaac.
Isaac's distorted like mask, so it goes with like an effect. So it
Yeah, and that stomp, like you feel it. It's like
Clack,
crash. Like,
yeah.
oh,
it's
jeez.
so good, and just like the buddy.
You're stomping limbs off of enemies. Like holy shit, nobody can do
Yeah,
that.
it's so good.
Really neat, really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, any other final remarks before we move on to fan stuff, guys?
Just one last thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
One of the greatest things I think about older horror games is that the enemies are unrecognizable. You don't know what the hell you're looking at because the graphics were so low.
That is true.
And the textures.
That is true. Yeah, the low poly.
Yeah, and the textures were really like you had like 60 pixels on a face, which is
Yeah, especially for Silent Hill 1, the distortion kind of adds to the surreal nature of the
oh
game.
seriously. And I think modern games like every monsters look so good, you're not as scared. And
That is true. They're more easily like, that's a zombie.
you're like, oh, okay, these are his teeth. This is like his head. You play Hybrid Heaven and have the enemies. You don't even know what's the face, And
Yeah.
so that's my 2 cents.
All right. Well, Lotus, why don't you kick us off with fan stuff?
Sure. So we have a few comments here. General Ledger says, I went to a panel at Comic-Con where Jeff Smith and Stan Sakai were talking about writing for children. They said the most difficult part was coming up with creative ways to placate ratings boards without compromising maturity in their stories. That's fair.
Yeah.
Stan came up with a skull bubble idea, which we mentioned before, to keep the themes of death and grief while satisfying the censors. Both artists were impressively modest and affable.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Yeah, Stan Sakai is really good with death. There's just a guy lying on the ground, but it's like a thought bubble, but like a skull. You're like, oh, I know what that means. Living Corpse says, this is regarding like YouTube, like ad revenue and payment and stuff.
Oh,
He
yeah.
says, back when I was a YouTube partner of like a third-party company that was sponsoring me, fucked me over my profits.
God damn it.
Blows.
That sounds typical.
Yeah, and Dracologist has 2 comments. One of them is
Love that
about
guy.
like... What?
Love that guy.
Yeah. Dracologist has 2 comments. One of them about like artists' compensation, because like Fakafon especially was talking about that last time. Dracologist says, I have a story on this. My mother spent time, money, and sweat and blood to make painted glass panels for a corridor, And when it came to compensation, the damn accountants had botched something up so hard she didn't get a coin out of it.
How the
I don't even understand how that happens.
how the fuck do you
ridiculous.
mess that up? Oh, the person who did
That's
the
fucked.
work will not get paid. What?
Yeah, that's like I know this is a very American thing to say, but that sounds like grounds for a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Dracologist's other comment is Space Station Silicon Valley. Because he was talking about a bunch of weird. We were talking about weird games last CoreCon, and Dracologist is like, "Oh, I know weird games."
Yeah.
So he goes, Space Station Silicon Valley kind of reminds me of Machine Hunter, a top-down shooter where you can take over robotic enemies. Xenoclash 2 was a bit of a letdown after it just gives you guns. Hybrid Heaven is like a turn-based WWE combat against aliens.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Vice plays Hylic? Huh. Bad Mojo is kind of revolting, but for a reason. Yeah, it's a gross game, but like that's because you're a gross person in that game.
Kafkaesque.
Yep. Anti-Chamber looks fun, still need to play it. Sentinel Returns, a game where you have to reach the highest point of a map by not moving, but absorbing environment parts and transferring your consciousness into other probes. I can kind of imagine that. LSD Dream Emulator, a classic, if a bit ugly.
Yeah,
Freak Out.
definitely play that on your PS3 with a Japanese account. You can get it for like $5.
Yeah, instead of like 300 for a physical
Exactly.
Freak Out, mostly just WTF factor, based on boss fights, fashion demons, and the ability to pinch stuff. Captain Blood, an interesting game where you travel space to find clones of yourself to reabsorb. What the fuck? The game's most interesting part was the way to communicate with aliens. Rather than selectable dialogue, you had a universal communication codex with nouns and verbs where you had to construct rudimentary sentences.
Yeah.
That sounds almost like sentience, where like
Sentient.
who, what, where is the choose the room, you know. Sacrifice, an RTS where you control a mage from third person to guide your armies. Has the most unusual deities. Undertale? Weird, but also endearing. Anything by Ice Pick Lodge, from Pathologic to Turgor, or Tenian, or The Void. Yep, that is quite a list of weird games. Now for our question, and this is on point. David Palermo, since Halloween is coming up, he asked us a while ago, so like now Halloween is here. What is the scariest video game you've experienced? And what will be the scariest moment?
Oh, I want to start off this one. The scariest...
No, I'm going.
Aw,
Go ahead.
fine, go ahead. It's your podcast. I'm the third wheel.
I am the podcast almost host. I make the whoosh noises.
I'm the podcast boy.
I'm the one who casts.
I'm the one who pods.
Yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
For me, it's the original XCOM on DOS. That game freaked the fuck out of me because I played it at a friend's house who his father had the game on his computer, and we were like, man, we were really young, like really, really young, and man, it's not really the visuals that were scary. It's just the whole like you can't see anything. You're on a mission. You don't know how many enemies there are. They don't know where
like
they
Fog
are.
of War.
You don't know where the danger is. Everything was so stressful, and the music is kind of like it's a little bit like The Thing, you know, where it's mostly like just like a repetitive sound.
Doom, doom.
Yeah, because The Thing like was kind of like a big heartbeat, and XCOM is just like a fast, nervous heartbeat, basically.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and stuff can really pop out in that game with you because right at you because like everything was randomly generated.
Yeah.
So you never knew where anything was gonna be.
That sucks.
And I think the worst is the first time we did because there's a few types of missions. Like you can attack an alien base, you can attack like an alien site, you can investigate like alien crashes. And the worst that can happen, which is like you don't want these to happen, but they happen anyway, is like alien terror. What would happen in those is like because what you're basically trying to do is stop the aliens from taking over and like stopping them at every turn, but everything has kind of like a cost because you're trying to keep your countries happy. Like if Japan keeps getting attacked, well, eventually they'll be like, well, fuck you, we're siding with the aliens, and you lose them.
Yeah.
So alien terror was like the worst thing that can happen because unlike a typical mission where if you don't take care of it, you lose like some like the country will be a little bit mad. Alien terror, if you don't do anything, you're losing half your fundings right there. Yeah, alien terrors were the worst because they cost a lot. They were very, very, very hard, and if you didn't take care of them, you're almost as good as done at that point. And the alien terrors would always have the most enemies. They would have the strongest enemies, and they would have a bunch of civilians. So that was a nightmare.
Wow.
And here's the kicker. Alien terrors would often have enemies that if they went close to your characters, they would kill them instantly, and then your characters would come back up as zombies.
Oh no, I didn't know that was a
And
thing.
it gets worse. If you don't take care of your zombie pals, after like 2 or 3 turns, then they turn into that enemy that attacked them.
Ugh.
And they're really hard to kill, and if they attack, they turn your other guys into zombies, and etc. etc. And
Wow.
so if you think that already that's bad enough, right? But they can also do that to civilians, so
Oh.
yeah, it becomes a nightmare super fast, and you have to take care of those missions. And the first time we did that mission, we didn't know, this is the first time. And most of our guys were down, so we sent 3 people to take care of it.
Smooth.
It was the most stressful fucking thing when we saw that thing approaching us, and we're like, what is this? It doesn't have a gun, it's not shooting, what is it,
That's scary by
Yeah,
itself. When
wow.
something like when it's late game and something looks non-threatening, and you're like, that can't be all there is.
It's
to
like,
it.
yeah, it's not shooting, it's not using mind control. What's it doing coming towards us? We have guns.
Yeah.
What is it doing?
Like, did you play Resident Evil 4?
Yeah, I did.
Do you remember when you first meet the regenerators? They're so slow.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, where are we going with this? And then they're like the scariest enemies in the game.
And then they spike up. Oh, that's like the.
Well,
so
those were the
freaking
later
creepy.
ones, but even the originals.
Yeah.
You know what's great? Did you ever take off their leg?
Man, I can't remember, but probably.
They're just like on the ground, and they crawl extremely slowly. But if you approach them, they kind of flop toward you, but they gain way more distance than you think. Like even when you know that they can do that, they still jump farther than you think they can. And you're like, oh, gee, like, they're really intimidating.
Yeah, those
and the ones that spike, they don't do that, but they crawl faster than they have a right to. If you get too close, you're just like, oh no, like those things are super freaky.
Yeah,
I think they were nods to Killer 7, by the way. They Heaven Smiles.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they have like particular weak points you have to shoot to kill them, and they have the big grins and they're like, and they do the laugh. Because Resident Evil 4 also has a gun called the Killer 7.
Yeah,
like,
that,
Shinji Mikami
that I remember.
worked on Killer 7. So like, your regenerators are like, what if Killer 7 was like an actual straight up horror game? Like this might be what they look like, and they're awful.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me in XCOM.
All right, well, I guess scariest game is a little tough because a lot of them aren't as scary like on another playthrough. But like I remember being really spooked by the original Fatal Frame. That was the first game to ever make me
That
like
one's
not
good.
want to play at night. Like
Yeah.
I played some because like usually I do my gaming at like 10 o'clock or later p.m. because that's when everyone's quieted down and like I have like a whole room to myself. And I was like, time to play me some video games. And like I played a bunch of survival horror by that point. Like my first horror game ever was Resident Evil Remake. And I played a bunch of stuff since then. So I was like, Fatal Frame. I remember seeing a bit of this in college. Now that I own a PS2 and a copy of the game, let's try it. And like, I had to stop and like try to find ways to play it in like the afternoon or something. It really got to me.
Man.
Like when I Let's Played it, I was actually kind of dreading it. It wasn't so bad when I Let's Played it. But the first time I ever played it though, it really got to me. Also shout out for Neverending Nightmares, a game that had me like on edge 100% of the time. The sound design of that game is crazy. If you play that game with headphones, it just like blasts like ambient like humming into your ears and stuff, and you're like, make it go away. It's so unnerving.
Oh, dude.
Even on a repeated playthrough, that game freaked me out.
Speaking of which, was it in Silent Hill 3 where like the fight music had a weird like humming to it?
It might have been. Although actually, speaking of Silent Hill 3, regarding scariest moments in video games, I would say 2. One of them was the classic Eternal Darkness bathtub jump scare when you don't know what's coming. That is one of the scariest jump scares I've ever experienced.
What is it?
The other, what was it?
What was that?
The bathtub scare in Eternal Darkness.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I remember that freaked you right the fuck out. But in Silent Hill 3, the thing with the thing with the nurses is like Silent Hill 2 nurses I honestly think are scarier than Silent Hill 3 nurses. But in Silent Hill 3, the nurses have very heavy breathing. So whenever you enter a room with them, you hear them long before you see them. A lot of enemies would do that anyway because your radio would go off. But you would hear the nurses going like and it's pretty unnerving. But there's one room in the game. This is the only room in the entire, I think, series where an enemy just spawns in the room you're in, but like you run down a long hallway and there's nothing there, and then you go back and there are enemies. Like Silent Hill has done stuff like that where you seemingly there's nothing, but then the scare happens. In this case, it was 2 or 3 nurses just spawning in the room, and like it was off camera, so I didn't see them blink in. But like it was a case where
Did you just say Abe Lincoln?
no, man, I said, hey, Blinken. But in any case, like, you're running away from the camera toward the end of the hallway. There's nothing there, and all of the doors and stuff, there's nothing to do. And you're like, why is this room on the map? So then you walk back toward the camera, but, like, the monsters have spawns, like, I guess, just past where the camera can see. They're, like, just in the foreground, so you just can't see them. And it does that thing where they all do the heavy breathing, but you know that effect where if you like play the same sounds like exactly over itself, it kind of just comes out louder.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
It was like that. There's just very loud, heavy breathing. It scared the hell out of me. Like I wasn't prepared for that at all.
Wow. Well, for my choice, I have a couple from when I was a kid. So I was extremely afraid of playing the original Silent Hill. Like the idea of playing Silent Hill like really irked me. And
It's a scary game.
Yeah, I had bought it and I was dreading playing it, but like I knew it was good, but I still like I didn't want to be scared by it. Yeah. So Pyro came over and we started playing it, and we were like really freaked out at the very beginning of the game, just like with the way that you're like traversing the fog and how everything is very weird looking, and it like the graphics aren't the best, so like it adds to the horror.
Like Fakafon was saying.
Yeah. So that really freaked us out. So we shut off the game like right after the babies like stab you in the beginning.
Oh, dude.
Like the first scare in the game.
That is such a terrifying
Not only that, but
moment.
even
it is.
Yeah, and even approaching that area way before you even get there, where you're like running around the corner, where there's just nothing in the alley. It's not a big deal, but like the way the camera kind of like. It's like it looks like a fixed camera game, but the camera like smoothly tilts as you're around the corner. It's just like a little off-putting, and that, by the way, is one thing that the movie recaptured like precisely, like the camera.
Yeah, that's true.
That. But like you're not used to seeing that in a horror game, like in fixed angle or anything. It's just like the camera just does like a slant, and you're like, oh, this probably won't be good. And you pass by a wheelchair with a spinning wheel. You're like, oh boy. Or maybe, no, I think it was a bicycle, actually. And, like, the wheel's still spinning, and you're like, Like, that was a Jacob's Ladder thing, but it's, like, it's super uncomfortable.
Yeah, we had so much dread of playing it, so we really just needed to shut it off. We were just too scared of it.
And you also probably didn't realize you're supposed to die during that scene, but you just see, like, 6 enemies appear with little stabby knives, and you're like, what the fuck? And then you just die. It's great.
Yeah, it was that experience, and also, you know, a little bit of Eternal Darkness, as you say, but probably my number one, like, still gets me, even though I've already played it. And this isn't even like a full game, but PT is probably the scariest game ever made.
When you don't know what's going on, even the like before any of the real scares happen, when you complete the cycle and like you're just back at the beginning, like the hallway just loops and you're like, what? Like it's super creepy by itself.
It's really brilliant. Like they did so much with so little, and really, like they were able to tell a narrative like. With the same thing going over and over again, like a repetitive environment, doing something different with it constantly, playing with it, and also still scaring the shit out of you, like, constantly.
And the funny thing is, there's a monster in that game, but you really don't see it that often. Most of the game is completely harmless, but you're still terrified.
And the monster is usually somewhat obscured, so you can't even like look at it properly.
Oh yeah, if you walked right up to it, it wouldn't have the same effect. It's always like just around a corner or behind a door or something. You're like, was that just? And then it's gone. Like that's what makes it work.
Yeah. Probably the most terrifying image that I experienced in that game is when the monster is upstairs from the balcony, just like staring at you in like the shadows. Like you just see like their face. Like peering at you, like barely in view. It's unnerving looking.
Well, I remember what you had mentioned was there's one part where the bathroom door is mostly shut when it didn't used to be, and like if you futz around with buttons, because the game doesn't really tell you the controls, if you like press R3 or something to like do your little
like
look
zoom
closer
in
function,
and
all of a sudden like the monster appears and like shuts the door in your face, and you're like, oh fuck, like it was just there the whole time.
It is, without a doubt. Like I'm very, like we're getting Death Stranding like in a couple weeks here, but I am very sad they didn't get to make whatever they had the idea for.
I know.
I mean, some people debate whether like they actually even like that was even a reality to begin with. Like some people.
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, you'll never get a straight answer out of anybody.
I mean, I suspect it was just because Konami like just killed PT as best they could.
Yeah, well, apparently, like he released it without the company's permission, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, apparently he released PT without like nobody above him knew about it. Let's just put it that way. But he was an executive on the board. Like he was really high up in Konami at the time. But like he didn't. You would tell your company before you release a teaser for a flagship product.
Well, not if it was Konami, you know.
But
I know we're getting into ethics here.
Yeah. Well, one last thing I want to mention, by the way, real quick, just because Vice mentioned how spooky it was in Silent Hill 1, where suddenly a bunch of enemies appear and kill you. I do want to mention one other. This is more of like a funny scare in Eternal Darkness, but it's scarier than in-game stuff because it's meta. This is a GameCube game, and one of the sanity effects in Eternal Darkness is when you like open a door and you enter a new room, like they're separated by loading screens. It's not a smooth transition. So like the next room loads, and there's like 4 or 5 enemies that are like right on top of you immediately, which is like bullshit that never happens. And they're just like right on top of you right now, and the little message appears that says like your GameCube controller has been disconnected, and you're just getting attacked. You're like, oh, and you're like frantically fiddling with your GameCube, even though there's nothing wrong with it. It's so scary.
He means no.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. But like when you die in Eternal Darkness, like you get booted to the title screen. Like you could save anywhere you want as long as there's no enemies, but if you die, you're gonna have to reload a save. So if you haven't saved recently and you get the fucking your controller isn't plugged in message, that is horrifying. And then like when you die, it just flashes back to the previous room where your character's like, what? Like this isn't really happening. Like, but like that is so scary the first time.
Absolutely.
I love that. And like using game mechanics directly to scare that player.
Yeah, even stuff like your TV volume going down. Now it doesn't look right on HD TVs, but it had like the green
bar,
horizontal volume bar going down. Like so on CRTs, it was like, what's happening? It's pretty great.
All right. Well, any final words on the subject before we finish things up here, guys?
I'm okay.
Yeah, that's probably it for me.
Okay, well, that is the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. You guys have been very active lately, so we really do appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
It gives us plenty to talk about, yeah. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. I can't talk, I'm tired. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, and Switch.
And you can follow me on YouTube, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting in discussions with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/Lotus Prince.
Guys, I'm going to be honest. I thought you were just doing a William Shatner for a second. But yes, you can find me on YouTube as Fakafon, and you can also find me on Twitter as Lou Fakafon. My webcomic is Kadrula on kadrula.com. You can also find it on Webtoons.
Hell yeah.
And my Patreon is patreon.com/Kadrula.
Well, wonderful. We will catch everybody for another episode of Reactive, where we will explore all of the things of this week in Shatner cadence. We'll catch you then.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Yay, spooky.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Spoopy.